Blake has been deeply in love with me for 10 years. But in the third year of our marriage, it was also him who cheated. When I saw him deliberately taking the side of that charming woman in his arms, and not hesitating to turn me into a joke in the social circle, I decided to fulfill his wish. On the day I got the divorce certificate, his tone was full of regret for the past. If I could go back to being 17 years old, I definitely wouldn't like you like a lapdog. Neither of us expected that there would really be a day when we could go back to being 17 years old. Even more terrifying is that when I went back to that year, I realized that the person I loved was not him at all, outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Looking at the divorce certificate I just got a minute ago, and a man beside me who seemed to be relieved, I suddenly felt that he was very unfamiliar. When I first got married to Blake 3 years ago, he happily picked up the marriage certificate and posted it on all his social platforms. He said that marrying me was a wish he made when he was 17 years old. Not long after his joy, he quietly leaned close to me, his eyes shining with tiny lights. He asked me in a low voice if we could tear up the marriage certificate. If we tore it up, we would be together for a lifetime. At that time, he was already the president of a listed company. Yet he would say such things. It's very childish, isn't it? 3 years later, he thought the same way. Because of the lack of the marriage certificate, he dragged me to make up a lot of materials for a long time. Even on a hot day. What he thought in his heart was to finish making up the materials as soon as possible, and get a divorce from me as soon as possible. Completely ignoring the fact that it was my menstrual period that day. How could someone who has been with me for 10 years not know how uncomfortable I am during my menstrual period every time? But now, he just wants to give an explanation to another woman. If you need any help in the future, you can still come to me. Blake turned his head to look at me. And on the screen of his mobile phone was still the photo of the divorce certificate that he hadn't had time to exit. I smiled bitterly. Are you going to post the divorce certificate on all major platforms too? Blake put away his smiling face and his tone was impatient. Stop making trouble. Elsa, you should allow everyone to have a chance to regret. I twitched the corners of my mouth and didn't respond to his words. Yes. He liked me for 7 years. And we were married for 3 years. For a full 10 years. He said he regretted it. He felt that the years when he loved me wholeheartedly were not worth it. Because he loved me for 10 years. But I only gave him 3 years of my love in return. I heard that the woman behind him was also from our high school and had liked him since high school. Her 10 years made Blake think of his own 10 years. When he was pestering me persistently, there was also someone who was worried about him. It's hard not to be moved. So we got a divorce. I didn't say I wouldn't give you a chance to regret it. Now you're free. I raised my head and gave him a faint smile. I'm leaving first. Not wanting to be left behind again. I took the first step. Elsa. The love you gave was really stingy. Blake suddenly called out to me. His eyes filled with emotions I couldn't understand. There was no need to respond. So I just remained silent. The obscurity in his eyes completely dissipated, leaving only a touch of alienation. He hooked the corners of his lips at me. Elsa. If I could go back to being 17 years old, I definitely wouldn't like you like a lapdog anymore. To be honest, fate is quite ridiculous. I don't know what it's trying to prove. Or what it's trying to uncover that has been buried. I went back to being 17 years old. The second year of senior high school. The memory in my mind only stayed at the moment when I heard Blake's words. The courage I had been saving for a long time suddenly vanished. I wanted to say goodbye to him properly. But at the moment I turned around, I still tasted the salty taste of tears at the corners of my mouth. So when a car suddenly appeared from the side and behind me, I didn't dodge in time. In the end, I could only hear Blake shouting hysterically behind me. Blake. I habitually looked to the side. But that position was empty at the moment. Blake's new position was separated from mine by a corridor. The moment I looked at him, his gaze quickly left me. As if he was afraid of having any connection with me. It seemed that he had also come back. It was also as if to prove the words he said. To distance himself from me. He went from being my desk mate to an ordinary classmate separated from me by a corridor. Elsa. Have you heard? Blake seems to be going to confess to someone. The girl sitting in front of me was a round-faced girl with pigtails. At the moment, she was winking at me playfully. That Blake liked me was not a secret. I clenched the test paper in my hand, forced a smile, and casually responded a few times. But she was dissatisfied with my reaction and pouted. "Aren't you touched? What should I be touched about?" The first step for him after going back to being 17 years old was to no longer like me like a lapdog. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them back. I pointed to the empty position beside me, pursed my lips. "The person he's going to confess to isn't me. He's even moved away." The round-faced girl looked confused and was about to say something when Blake's casual voice suddenly came from the corridor next door. There was a delicate pink gift box on his desk. Facing the teasing of the crowd, he finally opened his mouth. "Yeah. I like candy next door. Is there a problem?" The sound of heckling suddenly died down. "Blake. This obviously looks like it's for..." The boy in front of me had just placed the pink gift box on my desk. And next moment, the smile froze on his face. "Blake. This..." The boy stood beside me awkwardly and looked at Blake uneasily. Blake glanced in my direction, stood up directly, took the gift box on the desk, and said casually, "My buddy didn't know any better and gave it to the wrong person. It won't happen again in the future." Although I tried my best to avoid Blake after I came back, but my good friend from another class didn't know about the relationship between Blake and me. So when she dragged me into Candy's birthday party and I saw someone beside her, I didn't want to have anything to do with him and turned around to leave. I wasn't very familiar with Candy, but we had met once in the piano class during the summer vacation. After thinking about it, I still stopped and said happy birthday to Candy. "Elsa. Stay and have a piece of birthday cake. You can't refuse the birthday girl." Before I could answer, she hooked her arm around mine and led me inside, smiling brightly. "First, have some of the snacks on the table. They're really delicious. But there's too much sugar." I didn't expect Blake, who looks big and burly, to be so skillful with his hands. My gaze fell on the small cookies on the table. It was still the familiar taste. I have a sweet tooth, but the desserts outside always taste bland to me, and I'm never satisfied with them. Desserts aren't a necessity, so it's okay if I don't eat them. But Blake didn't think so. He knew how to love someone. Actually, he wasn't very meticulous, so there were always marks on his hands from being burned by the oven. He didn't care and just brought the made desserts in front of me, until he made the kind that best suited my taste. Before I knew it, I had eaten all the small cookies on the table. When I looked up again, I met Blake's gaze. He was standing in front of me. Because of the backlight, I couldn't see his expression clearly. "Is it delicious?" His tone was full of alienation. I nodded and then said, "But it's too sweet. Ordinary people can't eat something this sweet." "Yeah. It was a mistake." I held the remaining half piece of cookie in my hand. When I took another bite, I couldn't taste anything anymore. My friend, who had been socializing, sat back beside me. At the moment, she probably knew something, and her tone was filled with unease. "Elsa. I'm really sorry. I didn't know about the relationship between you two. Candy is a new friend I made, and I thought of bringing you along to join in the fun." I shook my head and forced a laugh. "What does that matter? Blake and I aren't together, and I don't like him. It's nothing." The 17-year-old Elsa didn't like Blake, but with the memories of 10 years later, to be honest, it wasn't that easy for me to let go. I picked up the cake that Candy had just given me, and buried my head in eating it, silencing my friend who wanted to ask more questions. The lights in the private room were flickering. Looking at the hustle and bustle on the other side, I felt a little dazed for a moment. My chest felt stuffy and uncomfortable. As soon as I walked to the balcony, I saw Blake holding Candy in his arms, his face full of tenderness. "Candy. I didn't know you liked me so much before. I made you suffer for so long. It won't happen again now." He started his new 10 years. In these 10 years, he will start anew with the girl he likes and who likes him back. With these 10 years of equal love, he probably won't regret it anymore. After that time, I finally clearly realized that going back to being 17 years old couldn't be changed. Blake chose a new beginning, and I just went back to living the life of the 17-year-old Elsa. The 17-year-old Elsa and Blake were originally two parallel lines with no connection at all. So I began to openly pay attention to the lives of Blake and Candy. I have to say that Blake is indeed an extremely qualified lover. Candy likes roses. So he went to all the flower shops outside the school, just to find the most beautiful bouquet. Candy likes the pastries from the west side of the city. So he gets up early in the morning to buy them and then rushes back for the morning self-study. Whatever Candy wants to do, he accompanies her to do it. He never complains and is extremely considerate. It's no different from when he was pursuing me before. Looking at the two people who were supporting each other across from me, I was so absorbed that I lost myself in thought. Elsa, what are you thinking about? The class monitor waved his hand in front of my eyes, his eyes full of concern. Why do you seem to be distracted a lot recently? Didn't you rest well? I shook my head, looked at the gradually rising sun, and changed the topic. Let's go early. It will be even hotter later. This was a team-building activity organized by the class. Twice a year. And this time, mountain climbing was chosen. Everyone could invite their friends from other classes on their own. So Candy was also in our team-building activity this time. Candy would occasionally pull Blake to talk to me. She heard that I had some research on characters. So when she encountered characters she didn't understand on the rocks, she would come to me for advice. Gradually, more and more people gathered around, surrounding me in the center. Later, Candy was probably pushed out. She seemed to have seen some fart she had never seen before. In a hurry, she directly hooked her arm around mine and kept me by her side. Elsa, you're so amazing. Looking at the sincere admiration in her eyes, I didn't have the heart to pull her hand away for a moment. So the situation became that she had one arm around me and the other hand holding Blake. The distance was too close. When Blake looked up at Candy, he would occasionally meet my gaze and then quickly look away. Elsa, I want to go over there and take a look. Do you want to go? She pointed to another peak. I was too tired to have the strength, so I simply declined. I shook my head. I'll just sit here and wait for you. You guys go. For the convenience of tourists, several small pavilions were installed on the halfway up the mountain. When the wind blew, it dissipated some of the heat and tiredness from climbing the mountain. Oops! My orange suddenly. There was a cry of surprise from behind. And immediately after, the oranges that had scattered on the ground began to roll towards all corners. I quickly got up to help pick them up, but when I was picking up the last one, I touched a white and slender hand. Let me do it. He spoke. His voice was clear and melodious. Yet I always felt that I had heard it somewhere before. My heart started to beat wildly and uncontrollably. I clenched the orange in my hand tightly. My subconscious mind told me to look up quickly, but my body suddenly froze in mudra, leaving me unable to move. Classmate, are you not feeling well? As he spoke, he suddenly bent down and was at the same level as my line of sight. He revealed the face behind the windbreaker. Fragmented memories suddenly rushed out of my mind one after another. After the college entrance examination, on a summer night, there was blood all over the ground, a young man's white shirt, and an unconfessed love. The intermittent pictures reappeared in my mind like a slideshow, frame by frame. Nathan. I barely managed to utter these two words from my throat, only to find that I was already on the verge of losing control. You know my name? Do we know each other? He showed a trace of surprise and slightly raised his eyebrows as he looked at me. I raised my hand, wanting to touch him, for fear that all of this was just an illusion. Suddenly, Candy's voice came from behind. Blake, why do you look so pale? I don't know when Candy and Blake, who had come back, were standing aside. Blake's face was terrifyingly pale. In the memories that I had just recalled, Nathan died during the summer vacation after the college entrance examination. His death dealt a huge blow to me. That year, I developed post-traumatic stress disorder and began to avoid everything related to Nathan. Until later, I buried him deep in my heart and completely forgot about him. When everything that had been buried resurfaced, I was horrified to find that the person I fell in love with when I was 17 wasn't Blake at all. Paywall point. I'm not sure where to start to describe the beginning with Blake appropriately. During the summer vacation when I had post-traumatic stress disorder, Blake had always been by my side. In high school, his love for me was quite obvious. However, matters of love can never achieve a happy ending just by one-sided wish. I didn't like him. Yet he didn't give up. All I could do was not respond to his shows of kindness. For an entire summer vacation, I lived in that muddled state day after day. Blake stayed up with me until his eyes were red. And he never missed any of my treatments. Even because of me, he gave up the university he liked and filled out the application from according to my choice. During the repeated treatments, I gradually recovered. With the effect of the medicine, I also forgot what caused this illness. Probably considering my health. My family collected all the things related to Nathan and burned them behind my back. As a result, for so many years later, there was always a blank in my memory. And I just couldn't remember it. After Blake went to university, he still chased after me persistently and cut off all my chances of having relationships with other men. In fact, whether there were other men or not wasn't important to me. Because I found that I didn't have any feelings of being attracted to those boys at all. But subconsciously, I always felt that I owed Blake. He shouldn't have focused all his attention on me. After all, he had been kind to me when I was ill. I had euphemistically suggested that he tried to like someone else. But because of these words, he got angrier at me than ever before. I never dared to mention it again. He chased after me. I tried to escape. I thought that maybe one day he would like someone else. Maybe he would give up when he was tired of chasing. I swear I had never seen someone so stubborn and brave. But Blake chased after me for a full 7 years. All the big and small things piled up. And even an iceberg would melt. Not to mention a person. We skipped the dating stage and got married directly. On the day we got the marriage certificate, he was wearing an expensive suit but cried like a child. But the person who loved me so much began to complain 3 years later that I had started loving him too late. He began to think that his 10 years of effort were not worth it. So we started to quarrel endlessly. Things began to get out of control. And in the end, he also cheated like those other men. I heard that he found a woman who had liked him for 10 years. I finally gave up on pestering. 10 years is a hurdle that's hard to get over. During those days and nights when he was thinking it over, the decision he made was to abandon me, whom he called heartless. Unexpectedly, we really went back to being 17 years old. He started a new life and received equal love from the girl who had a crush on him for 10 years. And I came back here to search for the buried past and save the person I liked when I was young. The main storyline development, due to the changes after Blake came back, also had an uncontrollable butterfly effect. During the previous mountain climbing trip, because Blake carelessly scratched my leg while moving the table for me, I didn't go. But this time, without those incidents, I normally participated in the mountain climbing and met Nathan in advance. I met in advance Nathan, who was supposed to become my desk mate the next day after transferring to the school. Hello, everyone. I'm the new transfer student. My name is Nathan. Please take care of me. I raised my head and happened to meet his gaze that was directed at me. Seeing me looking at him, he tilted his head towards me and smiled. And then said to the homeroom teacher beside him, "Teacher, I see that seat is empty. I'll sit there." Until he picked up his school bag and sat beside me. My tense body was still questioning whether this was an illusion. There is a saying that smell is the carrier of memory and feeling. When the familiar fragrance of XIN lamb laundry detergent on him wafted into my nostrils, I felt my eyes well up with tears again. Are you so sad to be my desk mate?" Nathan's hand froze in my dress, and he scratched the back of his head somewhat awkwardly. "Then, let me apologize to you?" He was always like this. Not knowing the reason, he was always the first to lower his head, whether it was the first time I met him, or on the way he came to find me after the college entrance examination. Obviously, having fulfilled my essay, it wasn't the appointed time. But because I arrived early, he was used to coaxing me with his head lowered. He clearly said that he would bring me Ferrand crisps that day. But I didn't wait for him. Nor did I wait for the Ferrand crisps in his hand. A thick layer of sadness intertwined into threads from the bottom of my heart and almost buried me. I was lost in thought for the whole class. What broke my train of thought were a few peach-flavored candies that Nathan placed on my desk. Sorry. I don't know why you're so sad. But I heard that eating candy can make you feel better. He pointed at the candies on the desk and smiled, showing his canine teeth. Throughout the whole day, I didn't have the mental preparation and didn't know how to start a conversation with him. It wasn't until the evening when the hygiene monitor reminded me to do the cleaning that I remembered it was my turn to be on duty today. Elsa, your partner asked for leave in the afternoon. You'll be the only one doing the cleaning tonight. Thanks for your hard work. I nodded. After waiting for almost all the students in the classroom to leave, I went to the corner to pick up the broom. Let me do it. You go and wipe the blackboard. I just haven't made the duty schedule yet. Before I could react, a hand stretched out from diagonally behind, and directly took the broom from my hand. Just then, Lesfen, a boy who had just finished playing basketball and was sweating profusely, came back to the classroom to get his jacket and whistled towards the back door. Blake let out a low sigh. Aren't you leaving yet? Could it be that you're waiting for me on purpose? I followed his gaze and saw Blake standing by the window of the back door. It seemed that he caught my gaze. He took a few glances at me and then casually looked away. Candy is on duty today. I'm waiting for her. I'm leaving first. I'll play basketball with you guys tomorrow. He picked up the school bag beside him, slung it over his shoulder, and walked out. Let me do it. I don't know when Nathan finished sweeping the floor. He took the blackboard eraser from my hand and started to wipe the blackboard attentively. It seemed that during this duty, I didn't do anything. His series of actions made me feel a bit embarrassed. I was just thinking about whether I should treat him to a drink or something. But he spoke first. His harmless face suddenly came closer, and the dimples at the corners of his raised mouth were faintly visible. Elsa, has anyone ever told you that you can't hide your emotions at all? Since that's the case, then treat me to a bottle of soda. Where you can decide something else. I'm fine with anything. Nathan has always been straightforward in his interactions. Since that interruption, I became familiar with him again. Moreover, we were desk mates, and we saw each other frequently. Probably because we met the day before he transferred to the school, and then he became my desk mate the next day. He always thought that we had a destined connection, so he was more affectionate towards me than towards others. Let me treat you to a drink. I was a boarding student, and he was a day student. There was a milk tea shop outside the school that served very delicious milk tea. I really liked their strawberry fruit ice. Looking at the unmelted ice cubes and the milk teacup in front of me, and then at Nathan's sweaty face. Did you run here? It's with extra sugar and ice. Drink it quickly before it's no longer cold. He turned his face to wipe the sweat and avoided my question. But I always felt that when someone shows excessive kindness for no apparent reason, there must be some ulterior motive. In the previous life, having fulfilled my sigh, Nathan always used the tactic of give and take to coax many treats from me. Seeing that he started to focus on his own business, I inserted a straw and took a sip. Hey, heading for sorry. Elsa, I have something to ask. Last time I did the cleaning for you and you treated me to a drink. This time I'm treating you to a drink. So will you also promise me a condition? Sure enough, it was the familiar give and take approach. With the memories of his past life, it was hard for me not to feel soft-hearted. Do you agree? Seeing that I didn't refute, there was a glimmer of joy in his eyes. Last time during the mountain climbing, I saw a group of people around you. They said that you have a lot of insights in terms of writing. I haven't heard them yet. Would you accompany me to climb the mountain near my home next weekend? Can you just talk to me this time? He spoke a bit hurriedly. At the moment he finished speaking, both he and I were stunned. It's not just me. There are also my friends near my home. He quickly turned his head, grabbed the Chinese textbook beside him, and started to study it seriously. I just don't know why, even though I have a psychological age of 27, my ears also felt a bit hot. When I arrived at the mountain as promised, Nathan and his friends had already been there for a while and were waving at me. In fact, in the previous life, there was also this part where I agreed to accompany Nath and to climb the mountain. However, compared to this life, it happened much later. I also met these friends that he mentioned during that time. Hey, heading self by insertion. Girl? Over here. A little guy with golden curly hair beside him suddenly jumped up and waved at me. I knew him. 10 years later. I saw him on TV. He became a local grassroots police officer and was praised on the news because the local public security situation was well maintained. Hey. Girl. You're really pretty. No wonder our Blake said something during the last mountain climbing trip. You're probably thirsty. Nathan expression. Leslie stuffed a bottle of mineral water, whose cap had already been unscrewed, into the mouth of the guy with curly hair. Let's go. The rest of them just smiled and didn't say anything. Except for the curly-haired guy who had choked on water and was mumbling something inaudible. He's a bit of a loudmouth. Just ignore him. Nathan said as he put the sun hat he was holding on my head. The weather this week was much hotter than the last time we climbed the mountain. By the time we reached the halfway point of the mountain, the mineral water was almost gone. Nathan called that curly-haired guy to go to the store to buy water. One of them went to the restroom on the way. And there was only a guy who had been silent all the way. Apart from occasionally asking me about some unfamiliar words, he had no other communication with me. We were sitting in the pavilion. When he saw me looking at him, his hand that was wiping his black-rimmed glasses suddenly stopped. And he looked straight at me. Just as I thought that this taciturn person would come up with some obscure and difficult question, he suddenly spoke. Nathan said that he met a girl who looked a bit silly but was really cute when he climbed the mountain last time. That's you, right? What a so-called taciturn person. Nathan has been my buddy since we were kids. Something happened in his family, so he transferred to our school. He can be a bit sarcastic sometimes and likes to play some petty tricks. We can tell what he thinks of you. I'm not asking you to tolerate his words. If it's you, he will coax himself. The more I listened, the more it sounded like he was entrusting something to me. Although I already knew how things would develop between Nathan and me later. But now is definitely not the time for love. Just when I didn't know how to answer, Nathan came back. For the rest of the way, heading fulfilled by obsession. We didn't stop to rest in the middle. After climbing the mountain, I unexpectedly found that Nathan wasn't ignorant of those things. In fact, there were some words that he knew better than I did. After we parted ways with his friends, when faced with my questioning gaze, he dodged my eyes and didn't dare to look at me. I'm going to the store to buy something. After he ran away, I found a bench by the roadside and sat down. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind me. When I turned around, I saw Candy being held in the arms of a guy. They were kissing. Candy had her eyes closed. And from the expression on her face, it was clear that she wasn't being forced. She was enjoying it too. The guy's eyes were very similar to Blake's. But he wasn't Blake. Seriously? You didn't know that Candy and Blake broke up some time ago? The girl sitting in front of me looked at my confused expression, suddenly covered her mouth, and let out a small exclamation. Candy was in a fit of pique with the person she liked at that time. And Blake happened to come around. So Candy used him as a target for her pique. We all know about this. But who dares to say it openly? Isn't that like slapping one's own face with Blake's big fist? Okay. Stop talking. Don't say I told you this. The girl sitting in front of me looked in Blake's direction. Seeing that he wasn't in his seat, she let out a sigh of relief and turned around. At this moment, I couldn't quite describe how I felt. Until I met Blake again at the corner of the stairs. Because of Nathan's appearance, I hadn't paid attention to other things during this time. He seemed to have become much gaunter. When he passed by me, he called out my name in a hoarse voice. Elsa. I seemed to regret it again. Did I want to laugh? Did I want to laugh at his experience at thinking he had started a precious relationship, but ended up being a clown? I opened my mouth. But I couldn't say anything. I just felt sad. There was also a trace of gratitude for him mixed in. If we hadn't reached that point, I probably would have tortured each other with Blake until we were old in that twisted relationship. There would have been no chance to go back to being 17 years old. I would have completely forgotten about Nathan. Forgotten about a lover who was as tiny as a grain of sand in the gap of time. All traces of him would have been erased. I moved forward. But what about Nathan? Was he going to stay completely in that summer after the college entrance examination? Blake, Gavin, there aren't that many opportunities to regret in life. Heaven gave you one chance. No matter what the rest of the road is like, just keep moving forward, I said. Blake, Ning Decoy, who had been lowering his head, suddenly raised his head and stared at me. The bloodshot eyes in his eyes were horribly dry and cracked. I think at this moment he must have guessed that I had also come back. Only in this way can his last bit of fantasy be shattered, and he can know how deeply he hurt the 27-year-old Elsa, and that their relationship has long been torn into an unbridgeable chasm. It can't be crossed, and he can't come over. It's not like that. Elsa. I was so jealous. I always wanted you to love me a little more. I didn't expect things to turn out like that. I ignored him and walked around him. At the next corner, I seemed to hear his sobbing. I think the 27-year-old Blake finally realized that he had used the wrong way to express his love at that time. That love was even stronger than when he was 17. But he made mistakes again and again, to the point where he couldn't turn back. That might be the best revenge on himself. After the college entrance examination, I fell into a panic again. In the previous life, Nathan died on the night we had agreed on. The night when he was going to confess his love to me. Before the college entrance examination in the previous life, he said he had something to tell me after the exam and asked me to wait for him by the small pond near my home. Actually, the sound of his heartbeat had already betrayed everything. But I still nodded obediently, ready to welcome that confession that would finally tear through the cellophane. However, as the appointed time approached, I still didn't see his figure. I was already a bit annoyed, and the chirping of the cicadas outside the window made me even more irritable. I couldn't help but call him to urge him. But I didn't expect that it would be the first time I lost my temper with him. And it would also be the last time he coaxed me. He had wanted to buy some oranges from the old granny's roadside stall. But he didn't expect to encounter someone robbing the old granny with a knife. What's more, he didn't expect that after he stepped forward bravely, the criminal would really strike. The criminal's knife stabbed very deeply. Nathan, who was lying on the ground, was still involuntarily twitching, like a dying fish. The blood on his chest soaked through the hibiscus shortbread he had brought for me. There were also the flowers beside his hand that had been crushed into flour mud by the passing vehicles and couldn't be recognized in shape. This time, I went to the stall from the previous life in advance and bought all the fruits on the old granny's stall, making her go home early in the morning. I also changed the place where we were supposed to meet, which was at least 10 miles away from that street. Time passed by minute. Just when I couldn't help but want to call him again, and the chirping of the cicadas in the midsummer was making me annoyed, Nathan appeared. The days in summer are long. The setting sun behind him cast a halo over him, making him blurry. I could only squint my eyes to look at him. Until he walked up to me, took out the bouquet of flowers hidden behind his back, and smiled. It seems that someone is a bit impatient. I walked to streets to pick the peonies you like. But it's still my fault. I need to give you a good coax. Don't you think so, my girlfriend? Nathan and I applied to the same university. Since then, Nathan started his brand new college life. And I, finally holding the hand of the person I liked, filled the void in my heart and started my college life. But I don't know why. Blake also applied to my school. There were actually better schools for the major he wanted to study. In the previous life, he came to this school because of me. But in this life? Putting aside all the reasons, it can only mean that he is stuck in the same place and doesn't want to move forward. However, he has never bothered me. Even when he meets me, he just nods faintly and then passes by. I let out a sigh of relief, but Nathan beside me started to speak sarcastically. It's so sour. I don't know where the vinegar pot has been spilled. It was only after we had been together for a long time that I understood what the guy with the black-rimmed glasses meant by being sarcastic when we climbed the mountain. I didn't say anything. Fine. I get it. Once you have it, you don't cherish it as much. Now you're even too lazy to talk to me. Okay. My dear sister knows it's hot and wants to give me some cold violence to cool me down. seeing that the words he said were getting more and more absurd. I don't know why. But I looked around like a thief, leaned in, let out a lull semi, and kissed him. Now. Both of us were silent. I'd just read a lot of novels recently. Everything seemed to be going according to the rules. But I don't know why. I started to feel anxious again recently. Especially this time. After coming out of the movie theater with Nathan. When there was a long line in front of the pastry shop and he heard that the hibiscus shortbread in that shop sold really well and ran to queue up. The panic in my heart reached its peak. In fact, since I went back to being 17 years old, I have never mentioned the hibiscus shortbread again. So when he suddenly mentioned this word, I didn't react. I just heard him tell me to wait where I was. And then he ran over. Looking at his figure getting farther and farther away from me, I actually felt that he wouldn't come back this time. I quickly set off to chase after him. But probably because of too much fear, my limbs involuntarily went limp. Tears also welled up involuntarily. Just then. Elsa. What's wrong with you? I don't know where Blake came from. I was like a person grabbing a life-saving straw. I quickly grabbed his arm and gasped for breath. Nathan. Please help me find him. He's in the pastry shop ahead. Find Nathan. My heart felt like it was hanging in the air. And my chest ached in waves. Even my breathing became rapid. And the scene in front of me turned into an overwhelming sea of blood. Don't worry. I'll go right now. Blake was made nervous by me. After helping me to a seat by the roadside, he ran in that direction. My heart, which had been hanging in the air, still hadn't settled. A scream in the distance instantly pushed my heart to my throat. I don't know who shouted, "Someone's dead," and the crowd immediately became restless. The scene in front of me suddenly twisted, as if the world had been crumpled into a ball of paper. I suddenly couldn't catch my breath. The next second, I fell into darkness. Elsa. Elsa. Someone was urgently calling me. When I opened my eyes, what I met were Blake's red eyes. My heart seemed to explode with a rumble, and the string in my mind snapped. Elsa. Nathan didn't die. Don't worry. Just a second before I was about to collapse, Blake spoke first. He's okay. Elsa. Could you spare some time for me? I'm begging you. I don't know why. But there was an indescribable sadness hidden in Blake's eyes. It was as if the next second, he would disappear out of thin air. At that moment, the words of refusal were swallowed back by me. Elsa. During the 3 years when we were married, did you ever love me? Really love me? Not treating me as a substitute for Nathan. He deliberately emphasized the word substitute. But at that time, I completely didn't remember Nathan. How could there be such a thing as a substitute? Blake, after the treatment in the previous life, I never remembered Nathan. I wasn't a substitute. No. Blake suddenly collapsed and fell onto the stool. Tears seeped out from between his fingers and wound down his arm. But why did you agree to my confession when I gave you a commemorative album? I gave you the cookies I made with my own hands, the carefully selected bouquets of flowers, the concert tickets of your favorite star, the fireworks I prepared for you on New Year's Eve. So many things. Why did you accept my confession when I gave you the commemorative album? The commemorative album. I suddenly remembered that Nathan also gave me a handmade commemorative album before the college entrance examination. Blake's love was finally reciprocated, but he mistakenly thought that I subconsciously remembered Nathan and then accepted his confession. Everything was incredibly wrong. Misunderstandings that aren't cleared up by talking can only make people feel powerless. Elsa. I can't move forward anymore. He suddenly stood up, reached out and gently covered my eyelashes. His hand couldn't help but tremble slightly. I heard him desperately suppressing his sadness, using up the last bit of his tenderness. Elsa. It's time for you to wake up. Nathan. When I opened my eyes again, I realized that everything just now was a dream. Elsa. You're awake. Nathan was in a flurry as he came to help me up, but faster than his hand was his red eyes. I shouldn't have left you alone to buy fur on crisps. It's my fault. Seeing that he was about to apologize again, I playfully pinched his hand. It was a real touch. Nathan survived. The accident that was avoided after the college entrance examination was now repeating itself. I heard that the gangster had been arrested by the police. But, thinking of my strange yet real dream, a bad premonition welled up in my heart. Blake. Is he dead? Nathan glanced at me, then turned his head away and said with difficulty. The gangster's target was me. I didn't notice what was behind me at that time. When I reacted, he had already stabbed at me. And Blake. So even though Blake came back and changed what happened, triggering countless indescribable butterfly effects, the main storyline had never been changed. It's just that this time, Blake was left here. He took the hit that was meant for Nathan. No wonder he kept telling me that he couldn't move forward. He asked me to be happy this time. I think this time, I will definitely fulfill his wish. I just fainted and wasn't seriously injured. So I was discharged from the hospital after 3 days. But Nathan was very meticulous. He was so afraid that something else might happen to me that he treated me like a precious ancestor. Walk slowly. Looking at him bussing around behind me, I suddenly had a mischievous thought. I deliberately blinked at him and teased. Are you so worried about me? What if I faint in the dormitory and there's no roommate around? I think. TSK. Nathan. How about we live together? Actually, I was just joking. But he fell silent again. And his ears and even his neck turned red. Oops. He took it seriously again. We didn't live together in college. But as soon as we graduated, we tacitly moved in together. After all, as adults, our needs in certain aspects are quite strong. What's more, my beloved who came back from the dead made me cherish him even more. Especially being overly enthusiastic in certain aspects. Like now. He was holding up his pants and covering his belt tightly. Looking at me with a vigilant expression. What are you up to? There's no more left. And I'm going to work now. Seeing that I was unhappy, he would come over and kiss me, saying softly, be good. Wait for me to come back tonight. His working hours were not very stable. So sometimes I would be so bored that I would rummage through the whole house. But unexpectedly, I really found something. Nathan's diary. August 30, 2002. I met a girl during the mountain climbing. There was a tuft of unruly hair on top of her head, but she was incredibly cute. I couldn't help but keep staring at her. Later, when I picked up oranges for someone else in the pavilion halfway up the mountain, I met her again. I'm a materialist. But the moment she called out my name, I actually thought that this must be a destined fate. I vaguely remembered that he also had the habit of keeping a diary in his previous life. At that time, his diary accidentally fell to the ground. When I picked it up for him, the wind just blew to that page. I transferred to a new school. I feel that this place is so boring. Except for my new desk mate. The tuft of unruly hair on her head is extremely cute. I really want to be friends with her. Maybe not just be friends. The end. Extra chapter, returning to 27 years old. Beep. Beep, let out a low sorry. Beep, in the midst of the commotion. I opened my eyes and saw the life monitor next to Blake going off like crazy with alarms. And then it turned into 3 straight lines. He was dead. The last thing in my memory was the commotion in the crowd. Someone shouting that there was a dead person. And then, let out a low sigh. I was back here and opened my eyes. According to the doctor, we had been in a coma for 3 months and were at risk of becoming vegetative at any time. But now, I was awake. Blake didn't make it. When his funeral was held, Candy also came. I'm sorry. She looked terrible and forced a faint smile at me. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have gotten a divorce. And such a tragic thing wouldn't have happened. Please accept my condolences. But I knew that with or without her, Blake and I would have reached this point. There were already too many bombs buried in Blake's heart. His misunderstandings about me kept piling up, and it couldn't be explained clearly with just a few words. Between him and me, it was originally a dead end. You don't have to be sorry. Even if it wasn't you, we would still have gotten a divorce. Seeing that I spoke as calmly as ever, Candy's face showed a trace of surprise. And soon she returned to that listless look. If I'm not wrong, the boy she liked when she was young got gastric cancer in college and passed away in just 2 months. And Blake's eyes were very similar to that boy's. When a person's spirit collapses, They will desperately seek a spiritual support regardless of morality. So she inquired about the story between Blake and me, and made up the story that she had a crush on Blake for 10 years. Blake used her to make me angry. She used Blake as a substitute. In the final analysis, it was a case of mutual exploitation. But the one who was truly hurt was me. So even though Blake is dead, I can't forgive him on behalf of my 27-year-old self. Candy put down a bouquet of chrysanthemums. Softly said, "Please accept my condolences," to me again. And then stepped out. To be honest, I don't have much emotional fluctuation in my heart now. Because going back to the year when I was 17 felt so real that it didn't seem fake. If that's the case, Tudding fulfill wide sasher. The one who died there was Blake. Then Nathan. I can't bear to think about it. Life went on as usual. I would occasionally go to the west side of the city to buy newly released pastries. But I would deliberately avoid Ferrand crisps. I would also try my best to grab tickets like college students on the internet, just to go to the concert of the singer I liked when I was young. But in the midst of the bustling crowd, my loneliness was even more pronounced. I miss Nathan so much. I don't know if he finally survived. If he did, where would he be now? Would he still remember me? Grandma. These oranges smell so good. Give me 2 pounds. What a coincidence. I met that grandma who I met when I was 17 again. Over the past 10 years. She has already had a head of silver hair. But she is still in good health. I think she probably recognized me, and secretly stuffed 2 more oranges into my bag. When I was walking home with the bag in hand, something devastating happened. The mouth of the bag broke. Even more frustratingly, it was a downhill slope. Watching the oranges roll further and further away, I quickly ran to pick them up. When I picked up the last orange, the back of my hand suddenly touched something slightly cool. It was a white and slender hand. Smell is the carrier of feeling and memory. The familiar fragrance of Axian lamb laundry detergent wafted into my nostrils again. I looked up in disbelief. Until I met those eyes as deep as a pool of water. He was stunned for a moment. And then squinted his eyes and smiled at me. The dimples at the corners of his mouth were faintly visible. "Sorry. I don't mean to hit on you. But I always feel that. Miss. Have we met somewhere before?"